Again, because we are in the northern hemisphere here in Vancouver, and despite sometimes the warmer weather in Vancouver, it's easy to forget just how far north we actually are. And because we're so far north, sometimes we even get to see the northern lights, the aurora borealis. And I know the North Shore Mountains get in the way a bit, but occasionally they manage to poke up above them. And I also know the auroras are rare. I'm signed up for an email service out of Edmonton that sends out a mass email if there is a 70% chance of the aurora borealis showing up, and that's called a yellow alert. And they send a second one if there's a 90% chance of aurora borealis. And quite honestly, I've only gotten 3 or 4 of those emails in the last year. It's been a quiet year for the auroras. But if you were here on Sunday, this past Sunday, you heard me mention that this coming year, 2024, is what's known as a solar maximum year, when the intensity and occurrence of the aurora borealis will reach an 11-year peak. The second candle on the Advent wreath is known as the candle of peace, and the Northern Lights have always symbolized peace for me because it's often in the deep midwinter, in the cold, thanks to the early sunsets and those long nights, that you're most likely to see the Northern Lights. And those moments, at least in my own life, have been some of the most powerful and peaceful moments there are. And so as we end the year of 2023 with hardly any auroras and expect next year to have much more, I can't help but think of all the global conflicts we're witnessing in our world. 2023 has been one of the most warsome years in recent memory. And so I pray the next year there might be peace. Perhaps you're like me and the images of Jesus' homeland of Israel and the absolute devastation in Gaza and the continued conflict in Ukraine gets to you. This space, this sanctuary, this chapel was built as a war memorial after the Great War. Between 1914 and 1918, this building was built about 10 years later as a message that it would never happen again. It was to be the war that ended all wars. And yet it's happened again and again and again. And it's not okay. Perhaps you're experiencing the conflict from around the world spilling into your personal life. I know I have many friends who park themselves either on the side of Palestine or Israel in the conflict, and they feel afraid and angry right now. We're witnessing a rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia here in Canada as people have a harder time distinguishing religion from nationalism. Perhaps you or someone you love is from Ukraine and are all too aware of the devastation there and the tensions that make it feel like we're right back in the middle of the Cold War 50 years ago. Or maybe your life isn't so peaceful right now. Maybe you are in turmoil in your heart, in your relationships, experiencing conflict in your family, amongst your friends, and conflict can tear a rift in the very fabric of our lives and our being, whether it's a war far away or a fight within our family or friends. We need peace right now, more than ever. And maybe you're struggling to find it. As I said last Sunday, I'm a deep believer that we won't have peace in our world or peace in our relationships until we first have peace in our hearts. And that's not an easy thing to achieve, but by golly, we need to try. So we pray for peace first within ourselves, and then within our relationships. Then we pray for our friends and our family, and finally for our world.